because of that, but as I say, unfortunately, high level.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this afternoon session on financing municipal bulk infrastructure. My name is Batho Mohotu. I'm a Deputy Director General at Infrastructure South Africa, and I'm responsible for the Infrastructure Delivery Office of SIDSSA. And I'm really excited this afternoon because the topic we're about to discuss today is right on top of some of the key challenges that we face as a country and SIDSSA, particularly around how to fund municipal bulk infrastructure projects. So before we start, may I kindly request that we perhaps switch off or put your phone on silent so that we're not disturbed during the session. And then I'm going to request our panelists to please introduce themselves. I'll start off with the Honorable Minister, and then we proceed accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, DDG, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists. Well, my name is Thembi Nkadimeng, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. It's a very easy but difficult question, just like where do I come from? I don't like those types of questions because the answers are not that simple, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Minister. Over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Moderator. My name is Zarfuta Samma. I'm currently the officer in charge for transport and logistics for Eastern and Southern Africa. My background is in civil engineering with an experience of about 35 years with development agencies and also with government agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Alistair Herbertson. I work with 91, which is a global asset manager, obviously founded in South Africa in 1991. We have been investing in infrastructure in a number of our funds, and specifically recently have launched an infrastructure investment fund in South Africa. And I've been working in the infrastructure investment space for well on 20 years now in a number of geographies, predominantly north of South Africa, but now heavily focused on the South African market.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Phillips. I'm the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Majabeng Mantata, responsible for municipal sectors at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, wherein our mandate is to develop, finance, as well as implement sustainable infrastructure projects in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introductions. In terms of the purpose and the context for this particular afternoon, we are really looking at finding innovative solutions in how we can unlock this conundrum that we have of the lack of funding for municipal infrastructure. And we're looking at different lenses. We're looking at some of the challenges in the governance issues to enable financing to happen. We're looking at the roles of the banks. We're looking at the roles that the infrastructure funds perhaps play. And also from an administrative perspective, from our experience, what are the collaborative aspects that we need to look at to make this viable, and the mechanisms that National Treasury really needs to look at to be a real player in enabling funding for municipal bulk projects. So it's within that context that we're here, and we want to ignite the conversation with yourselves. And perhaps I'll start off with the Honorable Minister, just to try to understand from your extensive political and leadership experience, which is very strong, how can we stabilize governance in municipalities? Because we find that many times, yes, councils are not sitting, they're not working, and it affects negative, production of the municipality. So in that particular context, and also secondly, we're looking at some of the lessons that we can learn from the Tshwane SEZ, automotive production, where we saw all the three spheres of government working together to enable a single project in a time when there was a lot of commotion within the municipality. And just to try to learn how can we foster that kind of collaboration across the entire country. Honorable Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much. I think the example you are making will really take us forward, the Tshwane SEZ. If you get to think of collaboration at the IGR level and spaces of which COCTA is responsible for, amongst its key functions is to ensure we blend together. We actually even dream together starting from there and then planning. And one of the lessons we have to learn in municipalities that are smaller, that is anything below a metro, could it be a secondary city? You'll think of Rustenburg, Umhlatuze, you'll think of George. Anything that is not within the 8 has a disadvantage of lack of forward planning, collaboration, and doing things together as part of a sphere of government. And secondly, if that is not happening right, smaller municipalities then have a disadvantage of over-reliance on grant and a fiscal system that is not designed to assist a small municipality to be able, one, finance their projects, two, even be able to plan bigger than a local space. I mean, you look into our LEDs, we'll talk about a small municipality, but we all know what drives the economy, it's regional economies. So it could be something beyond the district. It could be something beyond the local. It could even, in some instances, be something beyond a province, as in the boundaries. Let's take a practical example. Nandoni Dam, and DG Sean will know maybe the year when it was built and transferred. I've lost the memory. I was still in my beautiful province of Limpopo, where everything is green. You know, that's why we are a food basket, by the way. The dam is built next to Thembi district. Okay, in Thembi district. If I'm not wrong, 2003, 2005, somewhere there. In that district, there's still no water today. And the dam is permanently, if it's less, it's 104% full. It has actually exceeded its 100%. What happened there in retrospect? Thembi is a district, carries in fluctuation 4 or 5 local municipalities. After we've done away with the Njelele area, small municipality, development of a rural Collins Chabane municipality, which is about a stone throw to where Nandoni Dam is. It's a small municipality graded level 2. It can never afford to do a pipeline to the dam. Forget that the dam is close by, but its own budget can never. You look into another example, Department of Transport expand the licensing of Woodspray Airport. It's a tourism. It goes to the Kruger National Park. Marulaneng, their MIC, it's around 30 million per financial year. And that's it. So for them to do a road to connect to the Kruger National Park, no matter how much money they get. So this is a misalignment. So our planning is fragmented. What is the design of planning at local government? Is that the IDP must be attended by everybody else, including sister department. Because nothing flies. A police station is in a ward. A school is in a ward. But practically it becomes difficult for departments to attend IDP. And that's where the fragmentation of government is. And I get the stories I was presenting in the cabinet committee today. How many of you go to the evaluation order role to check how much your property is? But the law says the municipality can't electronically send the valuation roll to you. So we're going for an amendment so you can get the valuation roll where you are sitting. And you are able to rather than 20 years ago when the systems was done and you have got to walk into a physical office, is not doable. So in some instances, the law, in terms of how we have also responded into the realities and the changes, as government, we have been slower in dealing with that. But there are many examples of collaboration that have been practical. Whose responsibility was it to ensure that the country, during the hosting of 2010, is successful? It was not a sports and arts and culture project. It was a government project. And we had steering committees, everything jointly. Those who are supposed to build a house must do that. The police must secure. The roads must do aligning of robots and everything. To the latter, And it happened. But what did we do? Immediately we finished that project, we abandoned it. Second recent example, COVID. It was not a Department of Health problem. We all were in a one joint operation room and ran COVID jointly and successfully, of course, with our own losses. Lost a lot of human lives, but far much better than if we were not coordinated. So I do think that we may want then to look into the fiscal framework, into assisting municipalities to be financially viable. And I often say, if you want to win at municipalities, don't focus on the inward politics of a municipality. Extract from what the legislation allows you to do. Say to a mayor, I want a council resolution from you, which says you are in support of us building an airport in your town, and leave them to throw glass at one another. If you sit there, you are going to be overwhelmed and leave the space. To allow the legislation to fix that problem while you are not dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, but you abstract what you need. And at our level, assistance, if we can, to ensure that you arrive at the permission in the areas that you do not. What we all need to know and take responsibility for also, because we reside in a municipality somewhere, is that there can never be development if our municipalities are not developmental in nature. Business and investment follow progress. If there's no road, there's no water, there's no power, there's no stability, there's no one who is going to invest there because they want a turnaround time on the development of their things to happen much faster. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I think we've just led on to the next discussion around, the role of financial sector. And I think I'll ask the question to Mr. Tesma in the sense that what is the role of the bank in ensuring that municipalities get funding, for their projects? Looking at
Maybe she's saying try use that one.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I'm audible now. Thank you. In terms of the role of the bank, and the interest is looking at the views of the market. How does the market perceive municipalities, and looking at the municipality's balance sheet. At the back of the municipality's balance sheet, how do they work with the municipality? And if a municipality has a poor balance sheet, what are the mechanisms that the bank is putting to make sure that infrastructure is still funded? Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you. This is an interesting question because, as we all know, African cities are growing very much, and we are not able to cope with the quality service for the population. Most of them are used. So what the bank was doing is this problem was appreciated not only from the municipality financing point of view, but overall financing. We did some study, and the financing gap for infrastructure is huge. We are talking between 130 to 170 billion dollars per year, most of which is going to be deployed in cities. So what the African Development Bank did was, you see, we used to have this municipality and the urban issues as part of infrastructure development. But now, recently, we have established a division dedicated to supporting cities and municipalities. It's not just establishing the division. We have also established Urban and Municipality Development Fund, where we will support these municipalities in terms of capacities, innovative ideas, and also coming out with bankable projects. From one of the area which we came to know was that there is a need to prepare bankable projects. It's not only that we have projects, that some of the projects are not bankable. And there are also areas which require some sort of improvement related with procurement. So this fund will also support in areas where the municipalities and cities will be able to come up with some bankable projects. We also do advisory service on transactions. We have also a unit where we will legally support government and municipalities when they are dealing with the private sector. But just supporting the capacity will not bring the project into project. So we are also doing from lending side of view. Now we are mandated to give a loan to municipalities. That was not the case on previous years. Now we have mandate to do it with municipalities. It's one way is we'll give direct lending. We will also make sure that the private sector will participate by giving de-risking by guarantees. We do have partial risk guarantees. We do have partial credit guarantees, whereby the private sector will be willing to finance this municipality project, and we are taking the commercial as well as non-commercial risks under these instruments. This is encouraging the private sector to come and invest in huge projects. African Development Bank is rated as a good rating, and whenever the private sector sees the involvement of the African Development Bank, they are more encouraged to come and finance these projects. We do also do project financing. Project is felt either a specific project, or we look into programs where the municipality is developing, and we have an instrument where we call result-based framework. We'll have some sort of triggers and milestones to see that the program is being implemented, but it doesn't mean we are necessarily specifically financing a single project. What we are doing is we are financing the program. The most advantageous for the private sector is the guarantee instruments which we are providing. Because when you go to commercial banks, the tenor, the duration is not comparable with the project life cycle. So getting a loan for 10 to 15 years, but the project life cycle costing of 25 is not comparable. So we also, these guarantees also help to extend this period. We provide the guarantees, and this period will be extended. That means the municipalities will be able to get financing with a reasonable cost compared with without the guarantees. More we are doing on capacity building. That's where we need to help the municipalities in all angles. Municipalities, when you compare with the private sector have a very long year of experience in all area. So just to sit down, private sector and the public, there is a need to build the capacity from the public side. So that's all the outcome of all negotiations, all projects will be fair. Let me stop here and welcome.
Thank you. I think I want to pick on the guarantees aspect that you have touched on, that you offer guarantees, and throw the question to Mr. Herbertson. You know, from an investor's perspective, you know, what are the best practices in funding these infrastructure projects? Because there's an element of guarantees that the banks perhaps are looking at, that they offer to municipalities, or maybe it's more on a private public partnership level where that is happening. So in terms of the best practices in how you evaluate and do your risk profiles for municipalities, can you please maybe share with us some of those practices?
Absolutely, thank you. I think the most important aspect of assessing the credit or the investability of an underlying institution is always to understand where the revenue will arise from to settle the debt. And when we're looking at municipalities, obviously we look to see, strong corporate governance, good competence, but especially in South Africa, but in all countries, there are areas of deprivation which, there may well not be sufficient local revenue to be generated at the municipal level to service any sort of investment. And there we look across the board at the government's goal, the national government's goal in uplifting deprived municipalities. And then we do see support from the government being critical to making sure that the revenue will be able to be ring-fenced to repay any sort of an investment that's made by whether it's private sector or even public sector institutions. Quite often there is a lot of benefit to be taken from looking at performance or guarantees on the revenue stream where an institution, as described by the African Development Bank, which is the question I think you're asking, will facilitate the creditworthiness of the municipality and almost be an extra set of eyes, making sure that what's contractually and commercially been agreed is delivered. And that certainly does uplift some of the counterparties that were below an investment threshold to become more investable. But ultimately, we always are looking at the cash generation of an institution of any fundamental origin, whether it's public or private, to be certain that they'll be able to recover the investment in the asset or the infrastructure that's constructed.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Sean Phillips, I think, looking at it from an administrative perspective and given your experience as an administrator, looking at the role you played at GTEC and also, at IF per se, is to then say, how do we then crowd in private sector investment? And what kind of mechanisms do we have domestically that we can explore to make sure that there is this collaboration taking place?
Okay, thank you. I'll answer the question focusing on the water sector, given that I'm the Director General of Water and Sanitation. Maybe first, just to make a comment about the issue that you raised, Minister, about Nondoni Dam and the fact that we built the massive dam there and the communities around it don't have any water. It was a mistake that we made in the past due to a lack of integration in our planning. So we didn't integrate the planning of the dam with the planning of the distribution infrastructure. We're addressing that now. We have grants that we give to municipalities, particularly the poorer ones, Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant and Water Services Infrastructure Grant, and we're focusing on integrating that with the planning of the national water resource infrastructure and addressing these historical issues of communities around dams that don't have water and where the municipalities can't afford to finance that infrastructure. But apart from those grants, the water sector in South Africa is supposed to be financially self-financing.
Yes.
Water is not supposed to be financed from income tax or VAT. It's supposed to be financed from the sale of water. Mm-hmm. Maintenance and operation and investment in infrastructure is supposed to be financed from the sale of water. So the fact that it's financed from the sale of water means that there are lots of opportunities for both development finance institutions and for the private sector to get involved. And it means that theoretically there shouldn't be a problem with a shortage of finance for municipal bulk infrastructure or municipal infrastructure. And the situation is very different at national level to municipal level. At national level, we're already getting private sector finance for more than 60% of our national water resource infrastructure projects. For example, most of you have probably heard of Lesotho Highlands Phase 2, more than 40 billion rand project, completely financed by the private sector, by private sector finance. Rand Water is going to be doing a 35 billion capital works program so that they can treat the additional water coming to Gauteng from Lesotho Highlands Phase 2. All of that money, 35 billion, will be raised in the financial markets by Rand Water. Rand Water doesn't get a cent from government. Neither does our other major water board, the Umgeni Utugela Water Board. They're completely financially self-financing. On the basis of revenues that they get from the sale of water, they borrow money to do the necessary infrastructure investments that they need to do. So the topic here is financing municipal bulk infrastructure, but most municipal bulk water infrastructure is provided by the water boards, and they are, the big ones particularly, are raising the money in the market. So I would argue that the problem is not mainly with municipal bulk infrastructure, the problem is with municipal distribution infrastructure. Yep. And that's where we have a problem of a lack of financing of it. And that's where there's hardly any currently, there's very little private sector involvement in the financing of municipal distribution infrastructure. And that's the key issue that we need to address going forward. It really doesn't make sense because, for example, if you look at the issue of non-revenue water, municipal officials, the other day, the officials of Joburg had a media briefing where they said that they can't replace the leaking pipes because they don't have enough money to do so. They don't have enough budget to replace the leaking pipes. But if they replace the leaking pipes, they will have to buy less water from Rand Water, so their expenditure will go down. Yeah. So that saving should be sufficient to finance the private sector to fund the replacement of the leaking pipes. So why aren't they going to the private sector and making deals like that with the private sector? The private sector, as you've heard, is more than willing to invest. They're lining up to invest, but the cities, Joburg, other towns are just not bringing bankable projects to the market. Why? Our assessment is that the main reason why is the regulatory framework for PPPs and the way government has approached it in the past. And the good news is that we are having much more substantive and encouraging discussions with National Treasury these days about it. They are reviewing the PPP regulations, but more than that, they've agreed to go to these municipalities together with us and our Water Partnerships Office that we've set up to help municipalities put in place these public-private partnerships to provide a single window and starting with non-revenue water to have a focused program with standardized documents so it's as easy and quick as possible for municipalities to participate, and they won't have to get all the normal PPP approvals. And we want to do that in the coming months, starting with the metros. We need an accelerated program of private sector investment in the distribution infrastructure. So, for example, in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, is being all over the news in the last while because people are suffering. They haven't had water for weeks, some communities in Johannesburg. If we can work with Johannesburg City Council to reduce the leaks, that problem will be resolved. There will no longer be a shortage of treated water in Gauteng. So my argument is that the priority must be to get much more private sector participation in municipal distribution water infrastructure.
Thank you very much. And I think it's encouraging that National Treasury is working with yourselves in coming to, finding new reforms in partnering with the private sector. And I think to National Treasury, Ms. Marijeng Nalini.
No, she's not here.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
I don't know why.
All right. My apologies. So
It's good to operate from notes.
No, yeah. I think it's encouraging to see how there are these reforms that have been discussed in shortening the period because the triple Ps tend to take too long, generally. And I think in your view, what are these mechanisms can we now, or potential reforms can we put to shorten the time that a normal triple P takes? What are your views around that?
Thank you for the question. So as a state-owned development bank, we work very closely with COGTA, DWS, and other government departments, particularly those that are tasked with ensuring that municipal projects are developed and delivered on time and to budget. So working really closely with IGR in particular as our shareholder to roll out and implement the updated municipal borrowing framework that talks towards exactly what you've just mentioned, what the DG has mentioned too, around crowding in public sector. So while we wait for the triple P reforms to come through, the DBSA is working on a couple of pilots and live projects wherein we are using the existing, municipal framework to allow project off-balance sheet solutions for municipalities. So in particular, Section 78 of the Municipal Systems Act allows a municipal manager to elect to use an alternative operating model when implementing infrastructure. So we're working in particular with a small municipality in Mpumalanga, wherein the municipal manager has opted to use Section 78 as opposed to going the long route of the triple P. The project is a small-scale project. It's a refurbishment and rehabilitation of a water treatment works, and then followed by a pipeline build to traditionally black neighborhoods as well as informal sector. So using that Section 78 process, the municipality is able to crowd in private sector as well as look at off-balance sheet financing from the likes of a DBSA, wherein we know that municipalities' balance sheets are constrained, they are unable to borrow, and the sad thing is it's the municipalities that are not able to borrow that obviously are the poorest and have the biggest challenge around overcrowding, informal settlements and the like. So we have looked at a solution, and this solution includes entity that's going to provide that will be the technical partner in the project. There will be a revenue enhancement solution that includes metering and billing, and at the end of that process, the municipality will also have a profit share in the project. So those are one of the solutions while we wait for the triple P reforms to come through that the DBSA is working on. So municipalities and municipal managers are able to look at off-balance sheet solutions as we speak. And then going back to the topic of our panel, which is based on bulk infrastructure, the DBSA has recently made a milestone and progress in bringing to the market its a bulk infrastructure product called Vumela, specifically targeted to water and sanitation, stormwater and roads, waste, as well as basic electrification, wherein DBSA has incorporated an SPV with permission and approval from National Treasury. This SPV is going to raise capital from the markets, both public and private. It will implement infrastructure on behalf of municipalities. The municipality, obviously, as the owner of the infrastructure, will be responsible for operations and maintenance, but the implementing agent tasked with the design, the construction, the commissioning, and the delivery of the infrastructure on a turnkey basis would typically be a private sector player and or state-owned implementing agents like the DBSA's Infrastructure Delivery Division or a MISA, and as we get specialized, there are other SOEs that could step into the space. So therein is another solution wherein we don't have to necessarily rely on the triple P reforms, but that will allow municipalities and municipal managers to ensure that they're delivering infrastructure and services as required by constituents. So that's some of the work that we're looking at. But yes, as a bank, and particularly as a bank that has its roots in the municipal sector, we hold 60% of the municipal debt in issue as the bank, either through long-term loans or bonds. We are concerned about the sector, but we don't believe that the challenges are insurmountable. So there's enough resources within public, private, as well as the DFI space and the commercial capital markets for us to solve for these challenges. And the panelists before have already spoken to some of the reforms that are required.
And maybe also just to highlight, while I still have the platform and the ministers here, is a need to also look at the grant framework as it relates to operations and maintenance. We're seeing infrastructure collapsing, even including in our cities. So at some stage there was a discussion on senior levels, politically and administratively, to look at an operations and maintenance grant, because the current grant framework only allows a limited allocation towards operations and maintenance. So those are, so without repeating what's been said, certainly the solution for the municipal space is a partnership between private, public, as well as directive from our political leaders and administrative leaders.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mujabeng Mantat, and my apologies for that earlier. And I think you've summed it all up in the sense that we really need to commit municipalities now with their future allocations and partner with the private sector and lock in whatever future revenues streams that municipalities may have. We lock it in today and we start these projects now instead of doing planning for 10 years and waiting for allocations. I think we must start to look at reforms on how we can accelerate delivery of municipal infrastructure bulk projects. And I think the conversation has been very rich this afternoon. I would like to perhaps now look at the audience. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Interesting example in Mpumalanga.
Any questions?
Find out more about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Now.
Can you please tell us your name
Good afternoon.
before you start speaking here?
Am I audible? All right, yeah. It's Mandla Mapundera. I'm with Fieldstone Group. I think my question goes to the DG and the lady from DBSA. You don't touch on the aspect of collections. Alistair pointed out that, as an investor, the concern is about the cash flows, where the revenue is coming from. And local government has a poor record of collections. And how is, perhaps even for the minister, how is COGTA addressing that collections aspect? Thank you.
Okay, can we then have the second hand? So one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. Michael Pino from the Atlanta Special Economic Zone. Just out of interest, and there might not be a difference, but there was mention earlier of bulk infrastructure and then distribution infrastructure. How do you define the difference, if there is any?
Okay.
Thanks. My name is Mabaya from Chinaki Group. My question and comment maybe to the DG and the Minister. When you look at the movement of the grant, especially in water and sanitation, you can see that the grant is moving from the department to the municipalities. But when you look at the infrastructure on the ground, there is no maintenance, there is no modernization. I mean, you hardly find a town where the sewer is not running next to a taxi rank. You hardly find a town where rubbish is being collected properly. All of these basic things that are supposed to be functions of a municipality are not happening. And when we talk about strategic infrastructure investment, when you talk about crowding in the private sector, I mean, when you walk into the town of Val in Emfuleni, you must just go back with your money. Nothing works there. The sewer is passing by, the rubbish is not picked. is there a way that the minister, maybe through some of her institution or treasury, can grow bigger teeth to punish municipalities? I get a sense that accounting officers, officials receive this grant, they reallocate it to investment banks, they use it for other things, and nothing happens to them.
Yes.
And as a result, you can literally see in almost every town or in a metro, the infrastructure collapsing. You know, but when you look at the movement of the grant is going. I mean, 350 million. I mean, you look at the MIG with water, you look at the investment done by the Department of Water and Sanitation in Mfuleni with the VAL. Most probably in the past 5 years, they've spent almost 7 billion rand, but the sewer still run on the street. How is that possible? Thanks.
Okay, I think there's one more hand here, and then we can respond to the questions.
Thanks, Chair. My name is Leslie Ramudwa, Road and Stormwater Manager in one of the most rural municipalities in Northwest, Moretele. I just want to give a background because the minister is here. It's a rural, deeply rural municipality, 74 villages, 26 wards, grant-dependent driven. Now, Minister, I wanted to ask this question that, what do you do in such a case where the municipality has no potential to generate its own revenue because the unemployment sits around 70–80%, and all the households, you can't even put them on the valuation roll. You can't generate income in your normal municipal system. What do you do? Now, where you have infrastructure that has collapsed, that was left by the apartheid government, being left again by the democratic government. The MIG allocation, it's small. It only can do 6 kilometers of paving in almost in one financial year. What do you do in such? What will be the intervention of a national government or the province in that? Is the first question. The second one goes to the DG of water. We see the movement of grants, the water grants to our municipalities, but majority of these grants goes to the implementing agents. In our case, it's Mahalis. The grants from Department of Water and Sanitation in terms of the water, they are with Mahalis. But us in the institution, we have no memorandum of understanding with Mahalis to receive our grants on our behalf. Even in them implementing their project on our behalf, there's no any form of consultation. Is my question, how do we fix that? That the grants are rest with implementing agency, but us as the beneficiaries, we are not involved in it. And the second one, it goes to 91, the third one, it goes to 91 and the African Development Bank. How does the municipalities access these grants, this bulk financing? What is the criteria? How do we get there? Because there was a session that was held in Stellenbosch, and it said that the only municipalities that play in the financial market sector are the metros. As in the rural areas and districts, we don't get involved. Now I'm asking here, what is the criteria? How do we get access to this particular finance that will unlock the bulk infrastructure I was speaking here? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Can I please request that
One last comment.
we take responses and maybe we can have another round of questions?
That would be better. No, another round is.
Another round after this one.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm good.
We can go straight into responses now.
Yeah, well, we can start, but I guarantee it does look like it's me and Sean and the fire. By the way, I must confess that Dr. Phillips was my HOD, right? So when Popo hits the fan, I will throw the questions to him. And thank you for that guidance, Sean, in the early years of life. Colleagues, I think there are two issues that I'm going to raise with regard to the question that Mandla raised. Poor collection. The law rectifies where municipalities can't collect in terms of its fiscal allocation. What does it do? It gives you more equitable share. On the basis of the size and the population, yes, there is a variance a little bit because it will use the SIDSSA report of the current last, and you may be in year 3 before the calculation, there may be an additional number, but the variance is very minimal. Maybe the questions we really, objectively, Leslie, that we may also have to talk about ourselves in a closed room is how are we managing municipalities and the little that we get? It's a very fundamental question. And none of my colleagues and us really have a correct appetite to resolve. And I'm not going to use municipalities that have been given here. Let's go to Governor Mbeki in Mpumalanga. Some of you may be residing there, coming from there, grew up there. It's a very good economic hub at the regional level. Sasol is there. Quite a number of mines are there. Their rate of employment is 68%. So whatever you have given them, forget what Sasol and any other business is going to contribute. 70% goes into themselves paying one another. Then you only have 30%. No matter how much appetite as Sasol you have to fund projects. And that goes to our municipalities across. On top of that, they outsource, they insourced. So they have this 68% equitable share in everything and a grant, whether from DWS or IUDG, human settlement, the collection of these grants. Yes, they've got conditions, hence they are called conditional grants. But how we use them and staff ourselves. To me, it makes no sense to have 68% salary bill and still outsource grass cutting. I don't understand it, you know? Much as National Treasury is not here, there are some of the areas where they have to accept ourselves as cooked. And my CEO just stepped out now, I saw her earlier on. The management of grants. The law, Dora says, reallocate, recapture. You forgot to introduce yourself. And you've raised a very important point. I do not understand why in Sekhukhune, for example, Sean, as the DG, will give a grant to assist the municipality, and municipality choose to build a community hall with its MIG. I understand people would want to get married or anything, but it simply does not make sense. So both National Treasury and COGTA, in this instance, as the transferring agent of the grant, one or both of them are not doing their work. Because what are the priorities in Sekhukhune now? It's water, 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 and water. So how do you do any other thing? We have reviewed the MIC precisely because of what DPSA is raising. But if you look in the 2 years of the review, MIC before was saying build new infrastructure. Now we've reviewed and said take 12% and go to old infrastructure, repair, maintain. You can take 5 to 10% for planning. So you could be able to plan your overall using the infrastructure grant for as long as it's infrastructure related. But there is something wrong when you take an infrastructure grant and pay a salary with it. Then it means that design is not appropriate. I'm still waiting, really and patiently and hopeful, but I will not honestly say, let's wait. I was a mayor in 2013. I was still waiting, Sean, for this triple review. Now I call it more fanfare. It's something that will never arrive. So I encourage municipalities, bring a partner. We have a contract with DPSA. It means us as COCTA must pay DPSA on your behalf to get a bankable project. Let's rather do that. We do not get any service from that while extending it to municipalities so that we could be able to even go with what DPSA can do or beyond. There is, Mandla, a relationship. I think it was the second gentleman, between bulk and reticulation. Sean is correct. We do not have mainly a bulk problem. Yes, there are areas where DWS is still rolling out bulk. The law says they deal with bulk, we deal with reticulation. It's the same in energy. ESCOM deals with bulk, municipalities deals with reticulation. Of course, in the energy work stream, it was not followed to the latter as because ESCOM still connect as well, reticulate, but that's by the way. I'm just saying the law gives the two. In this instance, even in Nandoni, it's not necessarily a DWS problem, because the municipality provided even the land where the people had to be relocated, and DWS will pay for that. So if you are a sound municipality, here is someone saying, I'm building a dam in your neighboring. You have a building, you have a drawing, you donate land, you do everything. Why don't you begin with your reticulation? Why don't you plan for reticulation? Even if it's from village to village, village to village, people will know that I've got 76 villages. I can't reticulate them in one financial year, but you are village 1, you are village 2. We possibly should be somewhere else. So it will relatively be a difficult in Thembi today not to reticulate. They should be saying if DWS is the problem, we have our reticulation pipes, we're still waiting for bulk. But the problem is, and maybe the last on my side really on this question, is that we also have to accept and acknowledge the wrongs. And I can tell you we're doing quite a lot. As COCTA, just in the past financial year, we forwarded 328 cases to the SIU and the Hawks, 328. I'm forgetting, and it's 2 weeks ago, I'm forgetting the billions that they make, and really I could go and look for that figure. And that's the reasoning that besides the material irregularity that the AG will do, we also have to be accountable in the sphere that we are running. And we're trying to turn the situation around. A very painful example, and the Premier is not here, he hates me for that example, but it's unforgivable. Metsemaholo, a very small, rural, if you categorize it, in poor municipality. In the books, budget 21 million for a sports ground. They spend 21.9 million and there's no sports ground. And they don't spend it somewhere else, they spend it for the sports ground. I couldn't believe the AG when he says, Minister, there's no ground. I'm like, you're joking. The ground is a big thing, you can't miss it. Get these people to take you to the ground, to the sports ground. He says, I'm there. They are the ones who took me here. But there's no fence, there's no ground, there's not even a sign that there was gravel to start site. What do you do when you are minister? Arrest them. That's the only thing you can do. So those are types of cases. In fact, advocate was saying, no, give us this 326, but don't select for us. Ask the AG to refer all the books to us. I said, with peace. Because how do we censor from what the AG says? And it's true, it's a sample. It's possible that there's more. And I said, no, Advocate Libby, I'm at peace. If you have got the capacity, take everything. So we started in some municipalities, they went to an extent of taking computers. So we could see who generated the invoice. You can't have a municipality which is on disclaimer 5 years in a row and doesn't want to submit books. So there are those cases, and that's where the problem is. More than the grant, more than the Meritile lack of money. Let's go back to our room. Where there's no money and there's good spending, people see.
people see and people will understand that I'm number 10 in line to get a road. For as long as road 1 up to 9 are built to the quality, they will be satisfied because they know their 10 is coming. Now the problem is there's money, there's no plan, there's no 10, but there's spending.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Dr. Sean Phillips.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Shall I use
Yeah.
the mic? Okay. There was a question about revenue collection and whether there can be successful private sector participation if revenue collection is weak in the municipalities. I would start by answering that there's some key areas of potential private sector participation which don't necessarily require improvements in billing and revenue collection. For example, I talked about the example of non-revenue water in the metros. If the private sector can help to fund non-revenue water programs, including, for example, pipe replacement, that will result in savings in expenditure by the municipality, because they'll have to buy less water from the water board. And that, if those savings and expenditure can be ring-fenced, then it can pay off it can pay the finance that would have been put in by the private sector. Similarly, with other areas like water reuse, if municipalities could enter into agreements with the private sector that the water coming out of their wastewater treatment works could be at least partially treated and then sold, for example, for industrial purposes, that can be financed by the private sector on the basis of the revenues from selling the water. So I agree with you completely that there's an imperative to improve billing and revenue collection in municipalities, but the fact that billing and revenue collection is currently weak in many municipalities doesn't mean that there's no potential for private sector participation. There are a number of other areas where the private sector can participate, where that can happen now, even before billing and revenue collection improves. In answer to this question and also to another question, we've gazetted amendments to the Water Services Act. Those of you who are familiar with this will know that the current Water Service Act distinguishes between water services authorities and water service providers. Municipalities are appointed by the Honourable Minister here as water services authorities. And the Act says that the role of the Water Services Authority is to be a local regulator to ensure that water services are provided in that municipality according to standard. And unfortunately, that's not happening in almost all municipalities across the country. The municipalities as water services authorities are very weak. They're not providing that water service authority function. And they should be ensuring that the water service provider, whether it's an internal water service provider, with the service provided internally, or an external one, is providing the services according to standard. So we're doing amendments to the Water Services Act to strengthen the role of municipalities as water services authorities and to clarify what a water service authority functions and what water service provider functions. And part of those amendments is to clarify that billing and revenue collection is a water service provider function. Everything to do with providing the service, billing and revenue collection, maintenance and operation, even activities like supply chain and human resource management are part of the water service provider function. And we are in agreement with Treasury on this, and we're talking to them as well. The logical conclusion from that is actually you need to ring fence the revenues from the sale of water for the water function. And that's the direction that we're moving in. That should result in time in improved incentives for municipalities for improving their billing and revenue collection. Because currently, if you're the head of a water and sanitation department, you have very little incentives to do things to maximize revenue. Whether or not you maximize revenue is irrelevant to the budget you get. You get a budget from the town or the city, and that budget has no relationship to the revenues that are raised from the sale of water. So we are taking steps to address the structural impediments that are creating the wrong incentive environment for billing and revenue collection to be improved. The second question was, is what's the difference between bulk and distribution? I'm not sure about other sectors, but in the water sector, there's no standard definition, but the way we differentiate is in terms of the Water Services Act. The Water Services Act establishes the Water Board to provide bulk municipal distribution services. So, for example, it would be inefficient if all the municipalities in Gauteng were to have all their own treatment plants and large pumping stations. There's economies of scale in having a Rand Water to provide those functions to, and the costs go across all the municipalities in Gauteng which buy the water from Rand Water. So that's a good example of a bulk municipal service provider, Rand Water. And then the distribution is the functions done by the municipalities in Gauteng after they bought the water from Rand Water. But other people use the definitions slightly differently. Some people also talk about bulk distribution infrastructure. The problem of infrastructure not being maintained properly after we've provided municipalities with grants to develop it or to rehabilitate it is a very big problem. In fact, sometimes we're giving the same municipality grants repeatedly to refurbish the same infrastructure. So we'll give them a grant to refurbish it. 5 or 10 years later, due to a complete lack of maintenance, we have to give them another grant to refurbish it, which is very inefficient. My answer to this question would be the same as my answer to the previous one. We think we need structural reforms in the sector, which we're trying to move towards through the amendments to the Water Services Act and through our discussions with Treasury about the need to ring-fence the water and sanitation function in municipalities, particularly the revenue from the sale of water. The last question was about the grants and the water boards. We have 2 grants, the Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant and the Water Services Infrastructure Grant. All those grants go to municipalities for municipal infrastructure. Sometimes when, in our assessment, the municipality does not have the capacity to implement the project, then we ask another body, sometimes a water board, sometimes the DBSA, to be the implementing agent on behalf of the municipality. But the municipality is always involved. We don't prioritize projects for the municipality. We don't do it without consulting with the municipality. It's according to their priority list, which we discuss with them and engage them on. And it's only as a measure where they don't have the capacity to implement that we'll ask an implementing agent to implement on their behalf.
Thank you very much. Due to time constraints, perhaps we can just take 1 or 2 additional questions.
There was one question.
One question.
One question.
Yeah, from my side at least, anyway. Okay. My name is Nyeleti Makobele. I work for the Department of Public Works, and I have interacted quite often with SIDSSA, and I'm quite aware of the district development model and kind of understand how it works. But I wanted to check with you, Minister, how do we get these big ideas to the municipality? And I take your cue when you say a municipality will then want to build a hall. But how does that hall link up to this big infrastructure pipeline that SIDSSA has? And we're even producing a construction book for them to dream a little bigger and for them to dream outside what their constraints of the budget are. How do we get them to think beyond the RBIG or the MIG or whatever grant that they have and what is allocated to them for that financial year to say, there are institutions out there that you can draw from. And then when we're bringing, the logic is all roads lead to the local government. So whatever we're doing at national, whatever we do at provincial, everything leads to the benefit of the person who lives in a particular local sphere. So whatever we do here must lead to some benefit at a local level. I belong to a local municipality, but I work for a national government. And my thinking is on that big scale that we are delivering big infrastructure, but how do we tailor that big infrastructure to then become an inspiration for a municipality to say, here's bulk infrastructure that is coming, there's a dam that is being built, how are they readying themselves to receive such services so that we don't have this gap? And this is where the biggest gap is where the most services are actually are needed. How do we expand the DDM model, or how do we put COCTA at a central level where it then pulls all these projects and all these resources that are available and try to inspire our municipalities to think bigger than what is contained in their books, to say, I have got 1 million to build a road, but there's a big road that is going to pass. Minister was mentioning this other one that's going to join Eastern Cape and Durban. How do we then link those dreams to become like an integrated infrastructure system so that we don't get isolated even further? And that whenever we speak of big monies, it's almost as if we are like literally 3 different governments that are not talking to each other. With the DDM in place, there's still big projects that I bet some municipalities don't even know about. Some municipalities have no idea about this big projects that we were discussing here today and where the money is going to come from. They are still limited to their thinking, to their indigent status, where they're going to just receive a grant to do a small stadium there that they never built, or a few toilets there, or a community hall for weddings and other things.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think for DDM to be realized, firstly, we need to understand that development is intentional. My last participation at SIDSSA, I was president of SALCA. And at the time, we sponsored that we need SIDSSA Public Works as drivers of government infrastructure to develop an infrastructure handbook. Call it a Bible if you want. And at the time we're making that contribution on behalf of all 257 municipalities, is then it gives guidance. One, it will be from a social and secondly, economic type of direction that the country will need to focus on. Once you have an infrastructure development Bible, it should directly or indirectly be channeling each and every sphere of government to be looking into what is development driven in these particular 9 spaces which we call provinces. Let's take an example of what SIDSSA is busy with now, the rebuilding of schools in rural areas. Now, for a school to fully be operational, the municipality should have bought some land, water, a road. Do you think of those schools in the middle of nowhere where there's not even a road for a Toyota for a teacher who's driving to teach the learners? So you need that type, which automatically makes it wrong for a municipality to focus in a particular direction when the country's localized direction in that ward is towards that particular direction. That is why now, in the review of law, we're forcing municipalities to drill down into their plans into ward level. If there is a school that is coming into this ward, what am I going to do? If there's a police station, if there's a clinic, if there's any other thing that you think of that sits in this ward, what is the municipality driving towards that? Because that could be a social cluster development project, or it could be an economic development project, which are equally important. And Minister Zizukodo often says to me, then you are saying my portfolio is not important. I'm saying no. For as long as we do correct infrastructure and correct prioritization of our programs, there will still be that as the grant mandates, the 10% for social budgeting in a municipality. So you will still do a library, not that it's not important. You will still do a sports ground, you will still do a community hall, but you will not prioritize that outside of what makes life and an area user-friendly economically friendly so it can attract business for you. You could have all the others. If you take the 10% and make it 90%, that's where the problem is. Because yes, you will have a sports complex, but you won't have water. Actually, you won't even have activity in this sports concept because they can't even use the change room, they can't do anything because there's no water. And currently, that's the misalignment that we're doing. So if DDM fails from the infrastructure book, and this infrastructure involves everybody else and drives particular regional economies. You take a very good example of what partnership of Limpopo and Sanral, R37, which actually to Limpopo economically, yes, it's a good road, but it takes you to Mpumalanga in your Blade port and the huge tourism area. These ones contracted Sanral, did the road right up to the edge of Limpopo. When you go to Mpumalanga where it matters, you just get to be introduced by potholes. And you're like, but what type of a government plan like this? So what would have happened in that instance is that this is a provincial road which is done by a national entity. It's actually misaligned for us as government to plan it in a boundary level. When we know where it leads to, it can ignite an economy of a small rural municipality called Tabachweyu. But if you then have Tabachweyu with the main road and it doesn't do connecting roads, it doesn't assist with the power for guest houses, for lodges and everything else to boom, for them to receive the road and they build a sport complex, DDM will not be practical. So that's what we need to do. Sit in one room, practicalize this thing from a socio-economic development drive and make it sinful, as the president say. Minister, I'm going to make it sinful for you to spend here and not spend there in this area. And then us as transferring authorities, both ourselves and National Treasury in this instance, if we deviate in approval from the book, then we will be failing society in all its aspects. I think that's how it could work. That's our concept, but we are relying on you.
Thank you, Minister.
There was one.
We want to wrap up this session because we've got other commitments this afternoon. May I just please request just the 2 last questions, and please be as quick as possible.
But they must not ask me. Because of
there are plenty of panel members.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ladies,
ladies first.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Chipiri Muedi, and I'm from the Infrastructure Fund. I think the issues that we're discussing here this afternoon, we also discussed them on Sunday at the masterclass. And some of the names here, that's not enough because it's only looking at one sector of this municipal bulk infrastructure, which is a big issue from metro to the smaller municipalities. What are the reforms that are being done at national to ensure that that money doesn't follow what we've been doing? I think one of the issues with government is we've been doing the same thing that has not been working.
Yes.
What is it that we're doing immediately? Because it's become very urgent. Water has become very urgent. Bulk infrastructure has become very urgent to reform the industry. Even if it's a pilot on 1 or 2 municipal, I think there's a lot of programs that as government we are very good at creating, but there's just no mass movement of implementation. If you can have a good story and say, this is what we've done, we've taken the powers from the municipalities and we've implemented it in this manner and it has worked. Can we replicate to other smaller under-resourced municipalities specifically as well? Maybe then as the people of South Africa, we can then start to sit up and notice that, okay, they are doing something differently. Right now, the money flows the same way through the DORA, through the grants, and it goes to the very same people that are not implementing this infrastructure. And as the infrastructure fund, if you come, whoever has the money has the power around the table. So even as the infrastructure fund, as a financier, SDBSA, as AFDB, if you still have the same people with the same money, you're not going to change anything because they're going to do what they've been doing in the last 20 years. Thanks.
Thank you. One last question.
It's actually not a question, but an input, and it's aligned to Minister's comments or input earlier. So, Minister, you're referring to a Bible. I'm just going to, just an awareness that there's the National Infrastructure Plan Phase 2 that was approved by the PICC last week, which answers the question that you've been asking. So we've responded to that as SIDSSA. It has been approved, and we're going to be gazetting it before the end of this week. Thank you.
Just after I've requested Mbogodo not to ask me a question, and she does exactly that. How I motivate for your allocation and space and okay, no, there's quite a bit that we have done, and I think we'll get time to talk about legislation really. But for example, today, we are putting a coalition bill. We went to our cabinet cluster, we're tabulating in cabinet next week, a coalition bill for stability. There are 80 hung councils from 2000, they started at 24, a steady increase up until 80, and you all don't need to be told how unstable municipalities are. And there's a direct relationship between an unstable municipality with lack of accountability, lack of investment in the right place. But if you look into the project which jointly has been done using human settlement in Northern Cape, they've launched a 1.9 billion housing. For the first time, we've launched in such a peak. What did we do? Municipality is supposed to bring bulk infrastructure for human settlement to build. Human settlement have been having a grant, just like water will have, and give municipality to do infrastructure for their own informal settlement and whatever, and that will not happen. So what we did this time around was, we took from Sol, Plaki, I may not remember all the 3 other municipalities, their allocation of the SIDG, which is a bulk for human settlement. We clubbed it and we said in this one joint project, which will house about 1,200 or 1,100 and something people jointly. So we're doing exactly what you are suggesting, removing the rand and directing it to where it should go for development. And that's what the Bible will help us with. It forces, for a lack of a better word, us to say this is a socio-economic Bible for development in your country. And you are located in this space. And that's what one plans of DDM are saying. In this place, you are agricultural, you are tourism, you are whatever, and the key economic infrastructure that you need for your area to develop so that as a municipality, you could have ripple effect out of that development. You have to do this and do that. It's the same example that the DG is saying, that we will say as municipalities, no, I don't have money, yet I buy water and my losses are at 57%. So the immediate thing is cut the loss, you will have more revenue, right? Even if it's from a practical thinking, even if there was no business, no financier who is interested in your story, your first main target, if you are having a grant that is given to you, is to deal with the loss, your energy losses, which seeps through the system for you to remain with a lot of funds, or at least something so you could plan and develop better. But that is happening. So I appreciate the gazetting of the PICC. Maybe the next discussion for SIDSSA then will be, the Bible is here, we have got the projects which have been put in place, how effective has it been to change the system around? And one of the weaknesses for the systems, which we are also putting a legislation, is sitting in Parliament now to review 139 and 100, which is dysfunctionalities of municipalities, coming from financial viability and all that as assessment, is that you can't develop now if you the status quo remains. If even when you're under administration, council still can take a decision, a wrong decision, even if they've been advised. So if you don't change all the small issues that makes the matter and the problem bigger, yes, you don't have to focus so much of your energies, create the Bible and drive towards that direction. But spend time in correcting the small ills that are there. I mean, the designers of local government thought of a municipality as a part-time job. By law, there are only 4 council meetings, 1 per quarter, because this thing is a board by those who thought for us. I'm not sure whether they were wrong or we are wrong. The answer is for you to decide. But the municipality is a board. A council must sit 4 times a year. But if you assess council now, they've got that 4 times meetings by 18 special council. So there's something not right in the system, and you have got to assess it. So these people by design are sitting even more, triple than the allowed time that they should. And some of you will think there is a payment in a council. No, no one pays them, but they go to council. Special, excluding vote of no confidence. By the way, they just sit on special council. So you've got to review and get the system to work right, to be in support of a plan. Because if you develop a system and then a plan later, I think it has proven not to work for us. But I'm 2 months left. I wish Sean to be the Minister of Corporate and carry all the difficult answers.
Thank you very much. Can we give the panel a big round of applause? Really fantastic. We've come to the end of our discussions. Let me thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us. I know you could be doing other things.
Yeah.
We've got some gifts for you before you leave.
Must I declare?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can just take a group photo and then